Okay, I'm hoping this will be almost the last time we hear that.
Amen.
I will call this Planning Commission meeting to order on Tuesday, April 19th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Oh, wait, 6:31 p.m. COVID protocol notice is this meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of Government Code Section 54953, which authorizes the town to conduct essential business via teleconference. During the meeting, members of the public may participate by providing public comment and participate, let's see here, through joining the Zoom webinar. The Zoom link will be sent prior to the meeting. It's probably on the website as well. And live verbal public comments can be made by members of the public joining the meeting via Zoom. Use the raise hand feature. Before the meeting, members of the public may also provide public comment by sending comments to the Planning Commission, to the Planning Department via email, and comments received before 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting will be provided in their entirety to the Commission prior to the meeting and will be a part of the record, but will not be read verbally at the meeting. For more information, visit the town's website. And we will take roll call. Vice Chair Hillis. Let's see, Commissioner Helber.
Here.
Commissioner Teal. Commissioner
Here.
Davis. Yeah. Commissioner Bodie.
Here.
Commissioner Polsky.
Here.
Here, and I, Chair Lester, am here. We are also joined by the Town of Moraga Planning Director Hamid and Associate Planner Mio Mendez. Oh, we also have Karen Murphy, Town Attorney, as well, joining us. Let's move on to item B, conflict of interest. Do any of the commissioners have a conflict of interest to report?
To the chair, may I point out that this is also the time for ex parte communication. If there have been any meetings with staff or applicant, the commissioners may disclose those at this time.
I can start. This is Commissioner Polsky. I met with the applicant on Friday at the site. We did a site tour, and then I met with planning staff Monday morning.
Any
Had a
other?
discussion with city staff on one of the items on today's agenda, the ballpark for the baseball players.
I'm sorry, can you please repeat that?
I had a discussion with city staff today about the item on tonight's agenda, the baseball players or the Bay Area ball players.
Thank you.
So to clarify, my meeting with the planning department was also regarding Bay Area ball players, the agenda item.
Commissioner Teal?
Hi, yeah, I've also been in previous contact with the applicant regarding this issue. Was contacted earlier via email. Thank you, Steve. Feel I have a good understanding as well as speaking with planning on the agenda item for Bay Area ball players earlier today.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Vice Chair.
I intended to call the applicant today, but I had an infant with a tummy ache, so I apologize, but I'll have some questions later on. I did have a conversation though earlier today with planning staff.
I had a meeting with the planning director, but that's something that I typically do before every meeting. But of course, we talked about the issue at hand, as we do with every issue that comes before us. Okay, I think that we can move on from the Commissioner Bodie. You did not have anything to say. No, I thought I saw movement. Okay, it's hard to watch the screens. Okay, so that would be now contact with the applicants would have been included in that. I think we've addressed that issue, right? Part item C. Okay, let's move on to item number 2, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, do we have a flag hiding anywhere? There we go. Okay, Vice Chair Hillis, would you like to lead us tonight?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
United
the United
States of America,
and
to
to
the
the
republic
republic for which
for which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty,
and justice
justice for all.
Thank you very much. We will move on to public comments, item number 3. This time is reserved for those in the audience who wish to address the Planning Commission. The audience should be aware that the commission may not discuss details or vote on non-agenda items. Your concerns may be referred to staff or placed on a future agenda. Please note that the public input will also be taken during each agenda item. If there are any public comments at this time, please utilize the raise hand feature. And you will have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Sheriff, if I may, I just wanted to alert town staff. I've been told that the audio on the live stream isn't coming through properly.
Okay. Staff, is that of concern? Are you noticing that? Do we need to have the public hearing what we're saying, if nothing else, right? Visuals aren't as important as the,
Okay, so I did move the microphone to try to make it closer. They have, Chase, so can you guys hear me on Zoom? Yes, no.
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
They have changed the setup. I moved the microphone closer, but it's still, I noticed it was not picking it up very well. It's working on Zoom, but I don't think it's working very well on live stream. Because it's just a microphone on the floor that we put next to the speaker, and it's not getting it very well. So Mia, do you have any suggestions?
Unfortunately, if live stream isn't working correctly at this time, there's not much we can do about it during the meeting. We do highly recommend that if you are on the live stream and you can somewhat hear us, to please join the Zoom link, as the Zoom meeting is open to the public and the link is in the agenda.
oh, I see. So they don't have to be live stream. They can actually join into the Zoom link and be on the panel here.
And they do have it as loud as it will go, but there's probably even an echo with me talking when it's that loud. But we are definitely recording on Zoom, and they can join the Zoom meeting if they'd like to.
I think we're good in terms of it remaining a public forum and a public meeting. Okay. Okay, good. Then let's continue. I'm not seeing any current attendees raising their hand. So
Are there any attendees on the live stream?
I don't know. Have to come in through the Zoom link, I would imagine, to be able to.
So, Madam Chair, we wouldn't know. I think this is a question of town staff. Town staff can see what's happening at the live stream, whereas we cannot. And perhaps town staff could confirm if there's nobody trying to speak from the live stream.
Actually, if I may, through the chair, we do not provide an opportunity for anybody joining the meeting through the live stream to speak to the council directly or the commission. So
Okay.
any conversation that's required to be held for the record has to be done through the Zoom link.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Planner Mendes. I did not understand that.
Okay, good.
Yet another argument for going back to in-person meetings.
You're here.
We close the public comment. Again, comments will be available to be made during each agenda item. We will move on to adoption of the consent agenda. And that would include the March 1st Planning Commission meeting notes. Are there?
I so move that we
Okay.
adopt the consent agenda as presented. Excellent minutes, by the way. My commendations to the author.
Second,
Okay. Okay, and I will do a roll call vote. We have a motion made by Commissioner Davis and a second by Vice Chair Hillis. Roll call vote, Vice Chair Hillis,
aye.
Commissioner Helber, Commissioner Polsky,
Aye.
Commissioner Teal,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Bodie,
I'm aye.
and I chair aye. The motion passes unanimously. We have adopted the consent agenda. Moving on to number 5, adoption of the meeting agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the meeting agenda?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the meeting agenda.
Commissioner Bodie, looks like Commissioner Teal will be willing to second that.
Yeah, happy to second. Thank you.
Okay. Roll call vote. Vice Chair Hillis,
Aye.
Commissioner Helber.
Aye.
Commissioner Polsky,
Aye.
Commissioner Teal,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Bodie,
Aye.
and Chair Lester, aye. The meeting agenda passes unanimously. Moving on to the public hearing. Item A, conduct a public hearing and consider adoption of a PC resolution approving in part a requested new temporary conditional use permit to operate an expanded 70,000 square foot temporary outdoor sports and recreational facility for the operation of sports training and camps, baseball training, lacrosse training, new adult fitness classes, and birthday parties, consisting of an expanded 22,500 square foot artificial turf field, batting cages, portable baseball backstop, lacrosse goals, portable medicine ball wall, portable toilet, and temporary walkway. Is this, Sean, can I ask for the, Planner Mendez to give us a presentation?
Yes.
And would you like to say anything before he does that?
Yes, through the chair. Staff received a number of public comments on this project. So we were able to post those, as is our normal practice, to post the PowerPoint and the public comments at between 4:30 and 5 p.m. today, because we take in all the public comments and we comprehensively post them at the same time. And then I just want to make briefly just introduce this project. This project is, just center myself here. This project is for a temporary facility to allow sports facilities to continue here. And it is also an expansion of a temporary use that the Planning Commission approved previously due to COVID. So this applicant was before the Planning Commission twice before for temporary use, and because of the special circumstances of COVID, he was not able to operate indoors. So the Planning Commission approved a temporary outdoor facility that has expired April 1st, 2022. And the applicant is now here for a new essentially a indoor facility and a new temporary facility and expanded use. Thank you. And Assistant Planner Mendez will make a presentation. And then before we continue, I just want to remind the commission that it's important to take in all the evidence that is presented tonight before rendering a decision. And all the evidence means not only the staff report, it also means meetings with the applicant, listening to public comment, reviewing public comments that have come through, any presentation that the applicant may make, as well as the PowerPoint presentation tonight. So, and also, the deliberation between the commissioners. And before we move forward, if there's any commissioners that would like to recuse themselves, I think that can be done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I guess I will take this opportunity then to let the commission and the public know that I am recusing myself from reviewing this project because of my connections to the Bay Area ball player business. I have a son who currently utilizes the business at the indoor facility, and I am also working directly with Bell Hammond on a nonprofit sporting endeavor and feel that I might be too close to the issue. So with that said, I will hand it over to my vice chair to continue with the public hearing.
Thank you, Chair. Fortunately for the commission, my children are too young to play ball. Staff, I believe we have Planner Mendez. Is there a presentation that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
All right, so are you seeing the full screen or the screen with my notes?
Full screen.
Full screen.
Perfect. All right. So,
Good job.
As everybody has said prior, my name is Miguel Mendez. I'm town's assistant planner. And tonight we here before you the Bay Area Ball Players Temporary Conditional Use Permit application. This project is located at 1325 Moraga Way. The parcel number is 255-231-023. Just an overview of the presentation. We have a little background information for the project, the request, project setting, some discussion, basically the consistency with the Moraga Center specific plan and the excuse me, the findings required for a conditional temporary use permit. Then we go through CEQA determination and recommendation. So this is a temporary outdoor sports training facility at 1325 Moraga Way, with hours of operation occurring daily from sunrise to sunset until either a development application at 1325 Moraga Way is submitted to the planning department. The application finds another location where permanent outdoor sports field and facility is allowed by right under Moraga zoning ordinance, or the existing temporary operation is no longer financially viable. The applicant proposes an expansion of a previously approved operation to include sport camps, birthday parties, lacrosse training, adult fitness boot camps, and baseball practice and training. Furthermore, the applicant proposes to enlarge the site, a 70,000 square foot site, whereas in 33,333 square feet was previously allowed, and an artificial turf field that is going from 22,500 square feet, whereas in 10,000 square feet is what was previously permitted. So this is the project site. This is just some settings. The subject property is located on a portion of the vacant parcel at 1325 Moraga Way at the northern terminus of School Street, where the paved portion of the street ends and the roadbed becomes dirt and gravel. Located to the south of 1355 Moraga Way, the site is adjacent to the Safeway, located to the south, and open recreational vehicle storage yard is located across the street to the west, as the project site is located within the Moraga Center specific plan, where commercial uses are prominent land use types and commercial buildings are located to the south and to the east. The site is part of the Moraga Center specific plan and designated as the town square for the future.
Excuse me, Planner Mendez, can you just point out on the previous slide where the indoor facility is located?
Yes, the current indoor facility is located at 1425 Suite H of Moraga Way, which is where my cursor is at currently. So as you can see, it's within the vicinity of the indoor sports and recreational facility, the indoor baseball training facility. All right, so then we have some more project settings, just another map of what's going on here. The project is level, unpaved area consisting of dirt and gravel, as well as existing artificial turf area previously approved under permitted use determination UP 0620. The site is enclosed with a chain link fence, and 2 vehicular gates are located on the west side of the site. There is on-street parking along School Street and between the site and Moraga Road. So here is their site plan. Their site plan includes a pickup and drop-off area, vehicle circulation, a 22,500 square foot artificial turf, associated business operations and amenities, and sanitation facilities. So now here's the timeline for this project, dating from when it actually began. Back in 2019, the applicant obtained a permitted use determination to be allowed to operate the indoor baseball training facility in the community commercial district at 1460 H Moraga Road. This is very important because in the community commercial district, the previous zoning, the indoor baseball training facility had to go through a permitted use determination because it wasn't exactly similar to a permitted use. So it gained its approval and it began to operate. However, on January 3rd, 2020, the planning department was notified that a 7,524 square foot tent was erected at 1325 Moraga Way for off-season baseball training and was built without proper permits. So on February 18th, the Planning Commission, acting as the Design Review Board, heard the design review application for the tent and denied the illegally placed tent as the Planning Commission was unable to make the design review findings for that application. The applicant then removed the tent immediately after the denial. However, March 16, 2020, the Contra Costa County Department of Public Health, or known thereafter as CCCDPH, issued a shelter-in-place order response to the COVID-19 global pandemic. Continuing in 2020, in August 24th of 2020, the Bay Area ball players obtained a permitted use determination for an outdoor sports training facility for a period of up to 6 months, because it was all of our understanding that we thought we would be out of the pandemic within a certain time frame, and that just wasn't the case. So on March 2nd, 2021, the Planning Commission then received an additional application for a permitted use determination modification to modify the conditions of approval of UP 06-20 to allow the outdoor baseball training facility to operate for 30 days after either restrictions from COVID-19 on indoor sports baseball training facilities are lifted, or April 1st, 2022, whichever came first, and this was done under permitted use determination UP 01-21. So on June 10th of 2021, CCCDPH ended the blueprint for a safer economy and reopened Contra Costa County moving forward. So in 2022, however, February 16th of 2022, CCCDPH lifted the indoor mask mandate for all business operations moving indoors, and we felt that that was the time in which we could look into potentially ending the permitted use determination UP 06-20 and UP 01-2021. However, it was staff's determination internally that we would allow them to operate until April 1st of 2022, which is the end date of the use permit modification 01-21. So on March 2nd of 2022, Bay Area baseball players came in and applied for a temporary conditional use permit to legalize the expansion of the outdoor baseball training facility to an outdoor sports training facility to a date uncertain, and expansion of a business operation in space, also known as UP 03-22. The expansion includes birthday parties, adult fitness classes, lacrosse goals, portable medicine ball wall, summer camps, and increased space for operations. So the discussion for tonight is looking at conditional temporary use findings, can they be made, and Moraga Center specific plan consistency. So on the screen before you are the findings that are required for a conditional temporary use permit, and these are regulations that were adopted in December of 2020, right along with the Moraga Center specific plan. And while the approval of a temporary baseball facility under UP 06-20 provided the services that met the needs of residents during COVID-19 pandemic by replacing the permitted indoor baseball training facility with a temporary outdoor facility, the proposed expansion, as the applicant's indoor facility is now open, would be detrimental to the general welfare of persons residing or working in the vicinity of the use, as well as the neighborhood and city. Outdoor sports recreational facility is not a permitted land use in the MCSP MU-RR, which is the mixed use retail residential zoning district, which is what the property is currently zoned. And the site is envisioned as the future town square focal point. The proposed expansion of the business is to include, as what was stated prior, and would have a greater impact on the surrounding areas and exacerbate the current non-conformance of the temporary use with the Moraga Center specific plan and zoning ordinance. So we also get into the Moraga Center specific plan, and the project is an expansion that conflicts with policies and objectives of the MCSP and the purpose of the MCSP mixed retail residential zoning district. The zoning district envisions retail or similar uses on the first floor and residential uses above. The outdoor sports recreational facility is not a permitted land use. The MCSP envisions a town center facility as a focal point, as such as plazas or similar facilities proposed in the vicinity of the project site. The MCSP was developed through an extensive community process that, community process, and reflects the objectives of the town as a whole. And although an objective of the MCSP is to incorporate development opportunities for community centers such as gymnasiums, the subject site is not envisioned as that appropriate location for such use as a sports recreational facility and is not allowed in the MCSP mixed-use retail residential district. So for the CEQA determination, the project is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, pursuant to section 15304, minor alterations of land, class 4, subsection E, which is minor temporary uses of land, having negligible or permanent or no permanent effects on the environment. And the proposed staff evaluated the application not as a permitted permanent outdoor sports recreational facility, which is not a permitted use on the subject site, and determined that under CEQA, it would qualify for the class 4 minor alterations of temporary minor alterations of land. As it is written in the zoning ordinance, a temporary use means the use that occupies a site for a limited time, including special events, sales, promotional activities, seasonal activities, temporary construction related activities, and other similar temporary activities, events, and uses. Short-term promotional programs are a form of temporary uses. Allowing an temporary use for an ongoing basis is not consistent with the town's definition and could affect the validity of the associated CEQA determination that the use is temporary, having a negligible effect on the environment. So what that means is, at this point, we had to look at possible conditions that could be added that would allow us to make findings. And the conditions that we came up with in the conditions of approval are conditions 3, 4, and 5. And this approval shall allow for a one-time operation of a temporary outdoor sports and recreational facility at the subject parcel to extend the allowed use under UP 06-20. All features and structures comprising of the temporary outdoor sports and recreational facility shall be dismantled and removed from the property, and the property shall return to its original state or better no later than October 31st of 2022. Upon the occurrence of either event, the zoning administrator or his or her designee shall provide a notification letter to the applicant and property owner with a date certain on which all features and structures comprising of the temporary outdoor sports and recreational facility shall be dismantled and removed from the property, and the property shall return to its original state. And then 5, the operation hours for the temporary outdoor sports training facility shall be Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to sunset, and Saturday through Sunday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we feel that with these conditions, the findings for the conditional temporary use permit can be made. So staff's recommendation, it is staff's recommendation that the planning commission approve the requested new temporary outdoor sports and recreational facility at 1325 Moraga Way, temporary conditional use permit UP-03-22, in part to allow the operation of the existing 40,000 square foot temporary outdoor sports recreational facility for the operation of sports training, consistent of the 10,000 square foot artificial turf, batting cages, portable baseball backstop, portable toilets, and temporary walkway until October 31st, 2022, and denying the request for an expansion of the facility and turf field, camps, adult fitness classes, birthday parties, lacrosse goals, and portable medicine ball wall, as well as the request to operate on an indefinite time frame. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Planner Mendez. Commissioners, are there any questions from the commission for staff?
Yes, if I may.
Commissioner Davis?
Planner Mendez, the Moraga Center specific plan has certainly been pointed as a concern on your part. Is there any stated intent, that is application, before the town on the part of the owner of the Moraga Center to do any development at this time?
I would have to get back to you with the answer on that question.
Okay,
Through the chair, we do not have an application at this time at that location.
okay. Thank you. Thank you, Director Hamid. Is there any correspondence that indicates any intent to have an application in the next 2 or 3 years?
Staff does not control when a development application comes in. An applicant can come in tomorrow. That is not disclosed to staff. We do not work behind the scenes and regulate the timing or the schedule. And so
Okay.
it could be this week, it could be next week, it could be 6 months. We do not know.
So at this time, there is no correspondence that suggests an intent to submit an application.
And typically there is none.
I think with a landlord of this stature on a project of this scope, it would not be unusual to have had some advance notice, but I don't know that. I was
Not
curious to find
necessarily.
out. Okay. That is the only question I had. Thank you.
Commissioner Teal?
Sure. I guess as a follow-up to Commissioner Davis's question, could the staff comment on what, say, a duration would be from someone interested in development to the arc of when that project would be able to be implemented? Maybe that what you might be going for as well too, Commissioner Davis? The timeline for development that would replace what's currently there?
So the NCSP is, it's by right approvals in those zoning districts. So if an applicant comes in and they're meeting all the development standards, essentially, and objective design guidelines, essentially, they could get approvals in less than a year. Depending on when they respond to staff comments and how long they take to respond, that is not in our control. But if it's a perfect application, it could even be 6 months.
Okay. Thank you for that.
And I saw- oh, sorry, did you have another question?
I could ask a few.
Yep, absolutely.
Mio, great presentation. I really appreciate the timeline and the history. So just to be clear, it's both an expansion of use, an expansion of the physical footprint of the facility, and indefinite duration, so an expansion of time that we're being asked to review this evening, correct? Gotcha. Okay. I think that's it for now.
And sorry to step on your toes there. I jumped the gun. Commissioner Halber, I saw that you also raised your hand.
Sure. And maybe I heard wrong, Neo. This is Moraga Center specific plan, retail and residential district is the zoning, right?
That's correct.
Which is 8.41 of the Muni code, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. And this would be deemed not a, well, this would be deemed a fitness facility. And therefore, by right, the use would be limited to 10,000 square feet, correct?
Amongst other things.
I thought I heard you later say that there was no path to have it be a permitted use, but my reading is there is a path where they could get conditional use approval per section 8.41.030 to have a fitness facility greater than 10,000 square feet. Am I reading that wrong?
So this project specifically as proposed is actually a sports and recreational facility. It wouldn't be a fitness facility. Those are two different uses.
When I went and read the definition in the Muni code of fitness facility, I agree with you. I think it could fit under sports recreational facility, and it was really clearly fit under that. But then I also read the fitness facility and it seemed like it could fit under that too. Is there, am I, so that's the crux of the issue?
No, the crux of the issue is that we can only look at the way the project is proposed currently.
Okay.
And the way it's proposed currently, it falls under a sports and recreational facility, which is a not permitted use. So could it fall under a different use type? There would have to be a large amount of altering of the project, the business plans and operations, being that this applicant is predominantly a sports training facility. I don't see how that would actually work for his business type, but that wouldn't be for me to call. I couldn't design his business. And in addition to that, the location itself is already written in the Moraga Center specific plan to be a designated town square. So it already has an associated land use designated for the property. So you're definitely looking at the possibility of having to develop a specific plan alteration for this type of business to move forward.
And I would
Let's
just
go
like to
past the
provide-
second part, but the first part,
Yeah.
I was just trying to, so if the applicant were to come back in the future with a fitness facility use application, if I understand correctly, there would be a conditional use path they could go down. They would have to obviously get approval and everything and justify that they fit within that. But if they were to, that would be one path.
So it's based on a project applicant's project description. That's where it starts. And as you know, pursuant to their own project description, sports and rec or fitness, this is not considered a fitness facility. This is also not allowed in the Moraga Center MURR zoning district. It is not by right. It would be through a conditional use permit.
Yeah. Okay, that was my question.
Commissioner Davis?
Thank you, Chair Ellis. Planner Mendez, it seems to me that when we have approved by right uses for commercial property in this case, that's specifically speaking to long-term and or permanent use. Do temporary facilities even, are they even under the jurisdiction of the by right uses. A Christmas tree lot doesn't count either, I'm pretty sure. And it happens to be there where we might be talking about a town square, but it's irrelevant because it's a temporary use, correct?
Right, but you've actually put together two different issues. So we were talking about what could happen if this person altered their business operation to a fitness facility versus a sports training facility. So that was a different conversation versus what can go there now and what it's zoned for now.
I
So
think my point is it's a temporary facility in either case, whether it's fitness or sport or Christmas trees. It doesn't need to be a by right permitted use because it's not a long-term use. By right permitted use usually refers to long-term use, which this
Right.
is not.
right,
Mr.
and
Davis,
if I-
you are correct. What we're looking at tonight is a temporary use.
That's right. We are looking at a temporary use.
Yes, and a temporary
There-
use. And this particular use is not allowed in this zoning district regardless.
I think the by right uses are for long-term use, not temporary.
okay, so
Christmas trees are not allowed either.
if I may comment on that. So to your comment, we do have temporary use regulations within the town of Moraga. These are regulations that were adopted. This project, as it's presented, does not fall under any of those categories with the exception of one, which is the conditional temporary use permit, which is what you're hearing in front of you tonight. So
Okay.
now it comes to the point of, can this project create and make those findings? The findings that are required for a conditional temporary use permit. And it is under our determination in our research that we feel that as long as they meet the conditions of approval as proposed through the resolution, they can then meet the findings for a conditional temporary use permit.
Thank you.
See Commissioner Polsky.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hillis. Planner Mendes, thank you for the presentation. Can you expand upon the definition of temporary? As I read it, it seemed rather open-ended and did not present guidelines for a time frame. Can you give us a little bit more clarity on how we should be thinking about that?
Yeah, so I believe we're talking about temporary, excuse me, I'm sorry. Let me pull this up. We're looking at section 8.148.050 when it talks about conditional temporary uses. And this project wouldn't fall under any of the administrative approvals that fall under that regulation. So it would have to fall under section 12, F and G. And that's basically a catch-all for any type of temporary project that falls outside of what was previously described in the administrative uses. So once it does, we then have to make the findings of G. So my question, I guess, is which part would you like expansion on?
I'm specifically referring to the time frame. So you guys have recommended a 6-month conditional use, temporary conditional use permit. How did you come to that? Are there guidelines for what we can provide? I mean, in the beginning of that long document, I see temporary use means a use that occupies a site for a limited time. It's really the only time frame that I see there. So is it at the discretion of the Planning Commission to define limited time?
Yes, so there is a definition for temporary use in the Moraga Municipal Code, and it's typically like an event or like, like when realtors may have an open house. So that's for like a weekend. Or let's say a shopping center wants to do like a outdoor sales that might be for a weekend or it might be for a week. Pumpkin patch, those are maybe like 30 days, or a Christmas tree lot that might be 45 days. Essentially, it's for a limited duration of time. And you have to have a nexus and be reasonable in terms of the use that you are evaluating, as well as the duration of time. In this case, staff thought that we would like to extend the temporary use for 6 months, which is a season for the baseball to continue. And which staff felt was a reasonable amount of time to work with the applicant.
Did we lose Commissioner Polsky? I don't see him on my screen anymore.
Yeah,
Looks like we did.
I think so.
Well, in the meantime, I see that Commissioner Bodie has raised his hand.
Yes. Thank you, Vice Chair Hillis. So I guess my question here is back to the conditional use permit for sports and rec or for a fitness facility. So are we also extending this to other businesses here in Moraga that say run a fitness facility like La Marinda Soccer? Are we going to allow them to, perhaps move into the parking lot by the post office and be able to, play, like outdoor soccer or futsal, or perhaps like the, there's another fitness studio there, like not P90X or like, the F45. Do we allow them to move outside and also do their activities, right? Or the 24-hour fitness, right? I mean, like, I guess my question here is, do we allow this to other businesses, right? If we allow this to the ball players, are other businesses in Moraga going to be able to, will they also be able to take advantage of this? That's my question.
I think directing that to staff, have we heard any other interest from any other of these organizations, like Commissioner Bodie mentioned, for similar temporary permits?
To start unraveling some of those questions, to begin, conditional temporary uses are allowed to any business within the town of Moraga. So yes, to answer that question, we would allow other sports agencies or sports organizations or sports businesses to conduct themselves under the temporary conditional use permit. However, with that being said, why we chose what we chose for 6 months is by moving forward for a larger period of time, the problem with we're looking at is creating a precedent. And that's something that we are trying to stay away from. And by moving forward as is proposed from the planning department, we feel that this is regulations that we can work with and the town can work with as well.
Acting Chair Hillis, if I may, in response to Commissioner Bodie's question, we have had temporary tents in front of the Canyon Club on and off for a couple of years now. The private school over on School Street, just next to the Orthodox Church, has had tent classrooms out in front of their building on the side of the street for 2 years now. So yes, other businesses, whether they ask for a permit or not, have been allowed to do this.
Right. Yeah. I guess my question was more towards the fitness facilities, right? It's like sports and rec and fitness, but and I guess it's also back to the precedent as well, right? I mean, what are we trying to do here? And I think that Commissioner Polsky asked a really good question around like what defines temporary in nature, and at what point is it open-ended, and not trying to get us into a bird's nest here with other organizations wanting to take advantage of the same permits that we afford the ball players. So okay, thank you.
Commissioner Polsky, I see your hand again, and you got cut off, and then Commissioner Teal after that.
Apologize. My computer thought it would be a good idea to restart during this meeting. And so I missed the end of Planning Director Hamid's answer to my question. So would love to apologize if everyone else already heard it, but Planning Director Hamid, if you wouldn't mind repeating yourself.
I think basically what I said was that we do have a definition for temporary uses. But, you know, we also look at a nexus. So, you know, like if you have a shopping center that wants to do like a summer sale, that might be for a weekend or it might be for a week at the most. If you have open houses, realtors do open houses, that might be just for the weekend. If you have a special event, that may be for like 10 days. So you look to establish a nexus between the event and the date, and each event might be slightly different. But it is important to establish a date on which the use will finish, because it is the basic issue here is temporary. And so you want to have a date when this will start and this will end, because ultimately we also have to do code enforcement on these.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So using the example as a Christmas tree lot, so that has a defined time when they're selling Christmas trees, obviously. And so a temporary use would seem to fit within the time where they need to sell those trees and then clean it up. And so should we be taking into consideration the time for a small business to plan for the future? I mean, the amount of time that it would take to find a new facility, set a new facility up, you know, the burden of operating this business when we're evaluating how much time we should consider in granting this temporary conditional use permit.
Yes, so in this case, staff established a period of 6 months, which is a season for this particular use, and also reasonableness. And given that it would allow the applicant enough time to work to find how to continue his business. So those two factors were taken into account, the nexus, and we should have a finite date. And we should also, you know, not set a precedence. That was the other thing that staff wanted to look at. And I do want to point out that when a Christmas tree lot comes in, or pumpkin patch or shopping centers, that those are basically associated with the underlying land use. And so they're allowed in those places. This is a little bit unusual, and we worked with the applicant because due to the COVID restrictions.
Commissioner Teal, did you still have a question?
It's just for conversations that have been had with the applicant, and I know that applications are specific to the site, but has staff been able to advise on where the applicant can operate as either a sports training facility or a fitness facility, you know, by right, to say, you know, where can this occur within the current planning and zoning in the town of Moraga?
Yeah, we would be happy to have conversations with the applicant on where his facility can be located. And we would welcome that. Thank you.
Gotcha. I know there's hyper proximity to the current indoor facility, which the town worked with to establish the use, correct? So there's obviously why he's currently looking to continue doing what he's doing at this location.
And the original use was an indoor use.
Correct. Yeah, understood. I guess, Mia, if you could just bring the map back up again as far as, you know, where this is located, offset kind of from the parking lot area. So there's really no location for this where it could land in and around this particular site within the Moraga specific plan as an outdoor sports training facility.
I'm sorry, did you say you would like to see the map again?
You just briefly, sure.
And while we're waiting for that, I think if I'm hearing this correctly, I think what Commissioner Teal is referring to, there's a point in your presentation where you indicated that the MU-RR district would be potentially permissible for this type of use. Did I hear that correctly? And if so, where is that area? Is it on this photo?
I'm sorry, can you ask that question again?
I think what Commissioner Teal is getting at is there a I think you mentioned earlier in your presentation that there was a spot in the MCSP that would be permissible for this type of use. I believe it was indicated as the MURR district. And
Yes, actually, so this type of use, I believe with a conditional use permit would be allowed in the MCSP commercial district, which is actually located along this access road to the shopping center and covers the Safeway shopping center as well.
So if we were to take out the Safeway, we could put in a baseball batting cage.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Okay. I'm not sure that's the most likely course of action. More seriously, Planner Mendez, the area immediately north of Bill's Ace Hardware, is that a permitted use space? Or the, excuse me, the former Moraga Garden Center, would that be a permitted space?
Conditionally, yes.
Conditionally. Okay.
Gotcha.
The reason I ask is in the report in a few different ways, we talk about identifying the future or alternate options for this businessman. And I have been generally unaware of any place that was both level and not planned for housing. So I ask seriously, and if the Moraga Garden Center is one of those places that could be used, that's great news.
So just, you know, at the time of this report, that area was MCSP commercial. And last week, the town council did hold a meeting regarding housing opportunity sites. And it was the direction from council to take a portion of the Moraga commercial area where the nursery is located. And they would like to see that rezoned into mixed use retail residential to allow for housing there. But that has not, the zoning action has not taken place yet. And that would still need to come to Planning Commission and council before an amendment takes place.
Okay. So that really would not be an alternate place for the ball players.
Well, are we talking temporary? Or are we talking permanent?
I was actually thinking permanent because that seems to be what's implied when we talk about their next location after this 6-month opportunity window.
Right. And so
I don't imagine moving them twice.
right, so staff has put a 6-month period of timeline so he can continue his operations for 1 season. And if he so desires, to work with staff on an appropriate location.
Okay. So then that's going to come back to the previous question. What flat places are there in Moraga that are not now or soon to be scheduled for either mixed commercial residential or flat out residential? I'm not aware of a single one.
I think that we can talk about potential with the applicant to see whether or not they've explored any other opportunities like that. Or, for example, we just approved a ball field or a stadium in our last planning commission meeting. I'm wondering if we might have some questions for the applicant if they've had any conversations with St. Mary's, for example. I think I see Commissioner Polsky with his hand raised.
Thank you. Yep. Follow on to Commissioner Davis. So the MCSP, you reference objective 6 of 6, finding a place for a community center or gymnasium. Can the planning staff expand on that? And is that just a vision that we're projecting? Are we actively looking for that? Are we actively planning for that? Can you give us a little more, I think, kind of just to follow up with Commissioner Davis on where can this go?
And I'm sorry, I didn't hear the entire question. Are we actively pursuing?
Can you just expand upon objective number 6 of 6 from the MCSP? So it's referenced in the staff report. It says, recognize and incorporate development opportunities for community center gymnasium to address many community-wide needs for recreational facilities. So is that just is that an aspiration, or what is the meaning of that statement in the MCSP?
The MCSP has a policy, is a policy document. And then every year the town council does goals. And so what the town council does is looks at strategically the budget and capacity, and looks at how we can implement. So the policies are guidance and a way for council to then determine what timeline they want certain implementation items to take place. So for example, one of the implementation items this year is the housing element. So it went into the budget and it also became a town council goal and priority. And so that's how it's determined.
Has there been any action taken towards objective 6 since the MCSP went into effect?
Not to my knowledge, but that isn't to say that something could activate that. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners? I did have a couple of my own if there are no other questions. One question that I had in particular was if we were to approve an open-ended conditional use permit as the applicant requested, I think this is a question for the assistant town attorney. Would that create any kind of vested right for the applicant should another use be deemed appropriate in the future? What would the implications of that be if that is the case?
Yes, thank you. As the applicant has applied for a temporary use permit, as noted by Planning Director Hamid, that implies a finite date by which the temporary use would end. In addition, the CEQA exemption is based on the temporary nature of the use as well. So we would recommend having a finite date to the temporary use permit and to any temporary use. And in addition, you've noted another issue of potential concern regarding a approval of a temporary use that might be open-ended as well, because certainly that does give some right to use the land for the term of the permit.
The other question following up on that is, there's municipal code, but then we also have state law. You mentioned the CEQA concern. I'm wondering whether or not if we were to just continually approve a conditional use permit, would this eventually get us in trouble with state regulators for CEQA or other issues? Because clearly it's not temporary if we're continuously approving it.
That's correct. And typically a CEQA challenge can be made after the approval of a permit. So when any permit is approved, that would be the time that someone could challenge that CEQA finding.
And may I just add, then if we, if the planning commission elects to continually approve a temporary use, then the question becomes, are we being transparent to the public?
And then a follow-up question on that is I'm trying to get in my head the difference between this type of temporary use permit and the example that's been raised previously, the Christmas tree lot. And I'm wondering either town attorney or planning staff, if the core differences other than just the use is that those are more specific seasonal, where this is a temporary use that is being requested all year long. Is that a good distinction?
Yes, and a Christmas tree lot, a pumpkin patch are typical examples of a temporary use, and also may be allowed within the permitted sections of the temporary use chapter. In this case, we are looking at it as a conditional temporary use permit that would have to be approved by the planning commission because of the nature of this use, because of the time frame of it. Even at 6 months, that's longer than would typically be allowed for a temporary use permit that doesn't have to go through this process.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Does any of the other commissioners have any questions before we open up for public comments? Commissioner Polsky?
Sorry, can Ms. Murphy expand on that last comment where you said typically 6 months is longer? Is that, where does that come from, that statement?
Yes, I was just, the municipal code does have certain temporary uses that can be administratively approved and has timeframes for those permits. And, you know, for example, for miscellaneous temporary uses, it says they do not occur for more than 60 days in the same location within a 12-month period. So there are specific timeframes for administratively approved temporary uses. Because this application doesn't fall under any of those administratively approved temporary uses, the applicant is being considered under a section that's termed conditional temporary uses that allows for planning commission approval of uses, for example, for a longer time, or that don't fall under any of the traditional administratively approved uses.
Commissioner Polsky, the reason we're talking about this tonight is because it can't be approved as a 45-day project. A 6-month project needs to come to us, and 6 months is the number that's been attached to it, but is not a codified number.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? And it actually occurred to me before we move to public comment, I know that we do have the applicant here. I wanted to check with Steve Hammond if he had a presentation or anything he'd like to say before we move on to the public section of the meeting.
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
We can. Speak up a little bit, though. It's a little hard to hear you.
Okay. Is this a little bit better? Okay, I do have a presentation. Am I able to share my screen? Well, actually, I should be able to share my screen, but before I go into my presentation, I just wanted to, well, first, thank you all for being here. Thank you for hearing my project. I really hope that everybody has had the opportunity to see all of the responses and feedback that's come from the public before the meeting today. And I wanted to, before I go into my presentation, obviously I kind of created a slideshow with a clean slate, but then after hearing all of the comments and the report, I just wanted to make a couple comments about what I've heard so far. And I think listening along along with probably anybody else who's listening, it just seems like there's a lot of confusion created based upon the zoning, on the temporary uses versus conditional use permits. The MCSP zoning area, I think, has been super unclear about the exact locations of the zoning and what is in the zoning codes. I think it's been really unclear. So I wish that there was a way to clearly define what location we're talking about, what locations are now zoned as MCSP mixed use retail residential, which is where the site is, and then also commercial, which is where my current facility is, which includes a hardware store, which includes the old garden center. It includes a Safeway. So just having a clear understanding of the actual zoning that there is now, and also just an understanding that across the board, this has been super difficult to figure out as a business owner, to try to understand what my options are, and trying to figure out how I can proceed further, whether I can get approved with a temporary use, or if it's a conditional use, or if it's a temporary conditional use, or if it's a permanent use. So I'm trying to figure out what my options are. Obviously, in the Moraga Center, there's a limited amount of commercial space, and there is no location that could serve as a good sports field in the commercially zoned area in the Moraga Center. Because if there was, then I would have submitted an application at the beginning for that location. And then also, I just wanted to comment on the precedent. Precedent has been used several times as far as if this use could ultimately set a bad precedent that other businesses could try to step in. But we've been in there for a year and a half, and the only precedent we've set has been a positive one of providing a fantastic service for our community. So there, as far as my knowledge, and staff was unable to say that there's been any new applications for any other kind of temporary use. So I'll explain a little bit more about what I intend to do, what my application really intends, as I go through my presentation. But I just wanted to simply explain that this has created a lot of confusion in terms of the zoning, and this has been my exact experience, is having difficulty trying to understand the application process and what my options are moving forward for any kind of new business. I'm going to try to share my screen. I don't have any experience with this, so I'm going to give it a shot. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yep.
Can see it.
Gotcha.
Okay. And just confirming one more time, we're good now?
Yep.
Okay. There's a lot of text on the screen right here, but I just first wanted to clarify a little bit on the timeline. I know the timeline was presented by Mio, but I also felt that it was necessary to, the timeline that's on the right side of the screen is the project chronology, which is in the staff report, which is not the same necessarily as the timeline that was presented in the presentation. In the presentation, it went further back and talked about the tent, which has no bearing on this current project. But this is also kind of building on the confusion and the difficulty that there is to submit this type of application. In January, right after the holidays, I wanted to reach out earlier, but I wanted to give the staff a break over the holidays. But I reached out on January 4th, discussing the possibility of an extension with the impending April 1st deadline. Trying to discuss with staff that this has been going great. This has been a great need for the community. It's worked out well for my business, and I'd like to see if there's any way to continue this use past April 1st. On January 19th, I had a Zoom meeting with Afshan Mio. I didn't hear anything back from that. On the 27th, I checked in, didn't get a response. A week later, I checked in again, didn't get a response. And on the 7th, Mio just asked for a project outline of what I was proposing, which ultimately is the same outline that I've had for the last 2 years. The next day, I submitted a project outline, and a week later I followed up without response. Another week later I followed up, and that's when Mio stated that I needed a temporary conditional use permit, which required an application, a site plan, a project description, and so within 1 week I submitted all that along with a $3,500 deposit. And then a week later, I followed up, didn't get a response. A few days later, I followed up, and Mio stated that the project's under review. A week later, I followed up. 4 days later, Mio asked to meet and said that my application is incomplete. 10 days later, I had to go back to my designer, redo the site plan. He asked for specific things such as how vehicles were going to travel to the location and parking, and just a lot of small details that were already approved in my initial approval in August of 2020. I resubmitted the application on April 1st, and it was deemed incomplete or deemed complete on the 4th, but I wasn't even notified of that. I didn't realize that it was actually deemed complete. I followed up on the 7th, and Mio said I needed to have a shared parking agreement with Safeway, even though our parking that's stated in the site plan is along School Street, and Safeway is just a pickup and drop off area, which has been the same that we've been using for the last 2 years. And he also asked for my contract for sanitation and hand washing, which was never needed before. I followed up a few days later, didn't get a response, followed up a few days later, didn't get a response. And then on the 13th, I found out from somebody else that the staff report was sent out. I didn't get a notification that there was a staff report. And then just yesterday, I received an email stating that I need to provide another $1,100 in order to complete my application. So that was required before holding our meeting today, which means that it's been a $4,600 application process to get to this point. So on the zoning and permitted use, I spoke about the confusion with that previously. So the MCSP, mixed use, retail residential, it says that an park and outdoor recreational facility is a permitted use under the MURR zoning, which I think the staff seems to be trying to jumble words about what our application is and what specifically it should fall under. I mean, it's making the assumption that you might need to change the type of business you have if you want to fit under a permitted use. So in my opinion, it could fall under either one of these: permitted use or conditional use, a park or outdoor recreational facility or a fitness facility over 10,000 square feet. Our initial application was for primarily a fitness facility and baseball batting cage. Our initial use that was granted was essentially moving our indoor facility, which is a gym and a batting cage, outdoors, which is exactly what we did and what we continue to operate. An outdoor fitness facility and batting cage, which of course we have done a lot more than that because there's been a lot more opportunities to do other things and a lot more demand. And I just wanted to point out the statement that the staff believes that this proposed expansion would be detrimental to the general welfare of persons residing or working in the vicinity of the use, as well as the neighborhood and city. So if you read more than one or two of the comments or emails from residents in the community who have patronized this business, then I think that is pretty far off base as far as being detrimental to the general welfare. So also at the bottom, of course, this is still a temporary in nature. There are no permanent buildings, there are no permanent lighting. You know, this is where the confusion happens as far as what type of use am I allowed, whether it's a permitted use or a temporary use. The only reason that I wouldn't apply for a permanent use is because the property owner doesn't want this to be a permanent use. The property owner is on the same page as me, where we support the future development of the town square and the MCSP. But until that point, there's no reason to take away this super beneficial use and directly harm a small business with no plans for future development. Moving to a properly zoned location, I already touched on this. There are no other suitable locations. There's been talk in the town council, and there's funding toward a sports field or just a park and recreation facility, because I think people are starting to understand how much demand there is for youth sports and activities. But a town assisted development where the town provides funding as part of a residential development is not on the same topic. So this is referring to a commercially zoned location, and there is none that's viable currently, and there will be none, coming up. There's only commercial zoning is only going away. There's no commercial zoning being added. And the staff's gesture to assist in finding new location there, unless they plan to add new commercial zoning, then there is no location for a sports field in the town of Moraga. So to clarify on the expansion of the site, so there's currently at the location, not by my choice, there's, rocks and sand and bricks and a dumpster and storage containers. So my goal is to simply utilize the existing space more efficiently, staying within the confines of the existing fenced-in area. So there are, I think the initial approval was for up to 33,000 square feet. That was the site square footage, but that didn't even include the entire site, because there's so much of the site that's used by this stuff. So I am hoping to, I've always wanted to invest in moving this stuff and cleaning up the space, making it look nicer, but with a temporary end date hanging over my head. I can't justify an expense of trying to spend more money to clean this stuff up and utilize the space a little bit better. So that's really the only expansion that I have applied for, is essentially to improve some of the turf that has become unsafe, move this stuff around, just generally clean up the area and continue to clean up the area. So I have a little collage of some of the activities that we've done at the field. It's pretty incredible, some of the stuff that we've done over the last year and a half. I think it's been about 20 months that we've been out there. We've had sports camps. We've had St. Mary's players run baseball camps for us. We've had an Olympic sprinter run speed and agility training for us. We've had professional lacrosse players out at the field doing their training. We've had a Los Angeles Dodgers coach run clinics for us. We've had birthday parties. We've literally become the venue for birthday parties in La Miranda in the last few months, due to the demand for outdoor birthday party. We even hosted a wiffle ball league with 48 kids over the winter. So it's pretty amazing the different types of activities that we've had out at the field over the last year and a half, which there's been tons of support for across not only Moraga, but La Miranda, and even outside of La Miranda, where people come to the business and also patronize other businesses while they're attending sessions at Ballplayer Field. So would this be better if we field back to looking exactly what it looked like before, which is represented here? So overgrown weeds and a lot of gravel and zero smiling faces. So in terms of the staff recommendations, if you read through some of the specific recommendations, it seems like a micromanagement of, they're trying to micromanage what we're allowed to do, the services that we're allowed to provide. And it's specifically saying that they deny the request for an expansion of the facility and turf field, camps, adult fitness classes, birthday parties, lacrosse goals, and a portable medicine ball wall. So that means that I'm continuing to do fitness, and I'm allowed to continue to do baseball, but I'm not allowed to have lacrosse out there. So just the staff report as it reads is seems like we're cherry picking what my business is allowed to provide. And I feel like that's not something that any other business would have to deal with. On two of the conditions of approval, the applicant should adhere to a monthly site visit by the planning department to ensure the conditions of approval are met. I feel like that's really unreasonable. I have to set aside time to meet with the staff to check on me and to check on whether we're doing all right. I think based on the emails that you've received, I think we've done a just fine job of maintaining a positive influence in our community. And the applicant should adhere to a final site visit to ensure the land has been returned to the pre-permitted use state, which I believe they're trying to imply that I have to take down my medicine ball wall, but I can leave my pitching mound, or that I have to remove the lacrosse goals, but I can keep the batting cage. So I just don't understand why these recommendations would be put in. And I also feel that allowing 6 months, the timeline, so I guess I should expand on the timeline, is that since there's been a lot of discussion about the timeline recently in our conversation, is that 6 months, I think, Mr. Davis, you mentioned that 6 months is not much time, and Mr. Polsky, you mentioned that it's not much time to plan your business. 6 months at a time. I mean, of course, I would rather be out there for 6 months than have to stop operations tomorrow. But this has been a use that has provided a year-round activities and a year-round positive benefit for the town. So 6 months is an extremely restrictive timeline. And it just makes no sense that this temporary use couldn't continue until there's development on the horizon for this location. The final slide is that this meeting and the results of this meeting is going to have a wide-ranging impact. There's been almost universal community support for this operation and for the field, and removing the field will reduce options for outdoor youth activities, not gain any. There's no plans to gain any other youth activities. And is this what we want Moraga to have a reputation for? Removing options for outdoor healthy youth activities. And through our camps, clinics, and parties that we've added at the field, Ball Players provides employment to high schoolers and St. Mary's students. Much needed employment for local residents. And finally, the big question that I feel like is going to be answered by the end of this meeting is, does this town support small business? What staff is recommending is to ultimately shut down this field. It seems that they want to go through this 6-month period, and then the field shuts down just quietly and goes away. But that's not what's going to happen, because there's so much demand for youth recreation, and that's exactly what this field has provided. So shutting down this field without any kind of clear path of adding new outdoor activities for youth is just going to be detrimental to the town's general well-being and welfare, in my opinion. So I just hope that the commissioners can have the understanding that the commissioners, of course, are ultimately representing the town in your decisions. So I hope that you can look through that lens of your decisions that you make about this outdoor field are ultimately representing what you believe the town would want. So based on the public comments where it's 98% positive, I feel like it's pretty clear. And I think that is the end of the presentation. I guess my final comment is that, sorry, can you still see me?
We can.
Is my screen still being shared or no?
Actually, if you could you hit the red stop share button?
Got it.
There you go.
Okay. My final request after that presentation is that if there are any clarifications or assumptions made about the business or I've learned this from experience. If there's any assumptions or clarifications that I hope that you can offer me the opportunity to explain as you go through your deliberations, so that I'm not just hanging here in the dark without any opportunity to speak. So thank you for the time. I know that was long, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Polsky?
First off, thank you, Mr. Hammond, for the presentation. Everything other than the Dodgers comment was well received. We'll let that slide. Can you talk about the makeup of your clientele, or I guess the patrons of your business? Are they coming exclusively from Moraga? Do they come from the surrounding communities? What's the makeup?
Yeah, so our primary clients are all throughout school ages from 5 to 18, and I would say that they come equally from Moraga, Lafayette, and Orinda, along with several cases of people coming from much further away to attend different sessions.
And then the expansion into the outdoors has been a successful, or has it been? It sounds like it has been successful, and so it's becoming part of your business plan. Is this something that if you were to be denied use of this field, that you would look outside of the Moraga community?
Yeah, I certainly would. I have done everything I can over the last few years to try to build a strong business and community presence in Moraga. But the bottom line is that there is incredible demand for outdoor field space and recreation space, and especially artificial turf fields that can be used year round. But I've tried to do everything that I can to keep this type of business in Moraga. But as I mentioned, there are no other locations in Moraga. Currently, we're talking about a location that's currently being utilized by literally thousands of people in the last 2 years that otherwise would not have brought any of that business. So I'm trying to keep this business in Moraga, but of course, if this were denied, then I have to look outside of the area.
Thank you. And then one last question. Realizing that we can't have this as an open-ended, we can't grant an open-ended temporary use permit. What do you think is a reasonable time frame for you to run your business, find an alternate site without putting an undue burden upon your business?
I think that instead of putting a finite date on the end of this permit, I think that it may be perfectly reasonable and possible to put that finite date as the date that a development is accepted. So it doesn't have to be a date like December 31st, but I don't see how within the zoning parameters, which are incredibly confusing, that the date can't be 90 days after a new development is approved, is accepted. Whatever language you feel like is necessary, that staff feels like is reasonable, that's the date that I feel like is agreeable. And otherwise, if there's a finite date, then going back to that slide, that's what it's going to look like on that finite date. The field is going to look like weeds, gravel on that finite date for an indefinite period of time, which all of you live in Moraga, so all of you should understand that there's no guarantee that an application or a development is going to happen anytime soon. So I am proposing no permanent structures. I am not intending for this to be permanent, but in the existing condition that the field is in, there's no reason to need to shut it down until there's a finite development at that location.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bodie.
Yes. Mr. Hammond, thanks for your presentation. It was very helpful to hear it and to see it. My question is in regards to your current rental terms with your landlord. So what are those terms? And I too struggle with not having the date, so I would reiterate, I'd reiterate the question from Commissioner Polsky on having a date out there. And perhaps it's, one of the recommendations that I would propose to you, but back to the first questions on a rental term. So you must have a rental agreement. So what are the current terms? What's your current monthly rent? And what's the future rent? So, I mean, in terms of expansion. So perhaps you can talk to us a little bit about what you've done on the business side with the landlord.
So I'm not at liberty to discuss rental terms, but I'll say that our agreement for leasing that land is a month-to-month agreement because the landowner is also the developer. And the landowner has made very clear that they don't want a permanent sports field at this location because they feel that it's not the highest and best use, which of course I'm not going to be able to pay as much to run a sports field as a developer would to build condos. So our agreement is month to month with the understanding, with the agreement stating that as soon as there's a development, he's going to kick me out. It's very simple. So it goes along with the previous comment that I made.
Oh, okay, all right, then so I'm clear. It's currently month to month. And you don't have to share the dollar amount. The dollar amount will not increase though. So if you expand your presence at the sports fields, the dollar amount stays the same?
I'm leasing the area within the confines of the chain link fence. So that's my lease terms are related to that location. And I'm currently only utilizing 50-60% of that because of stuff going on. And no, obviously any lease negotiations are between landlord and I, but it's a month-to-month contract.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. Mr. Hammond, following up with Commissioner Bodie's question. So I understand now that you, the owner, who is also the developer, are already perfectly aligned on both parties' interests in seeing the future planned development. You're both perfectly aligned on your month-to-month unsecured tenancy. You already have a full lease, a month-to-month lease of the full site you need. And as soon as conditions changed to where the town would have an interest in that property because of a development plan, you already have a terminated lease with the owner/developer. Is that correct?
All of that's correct.
I kind of wonder why there's a problem.
Any other questions, commissioners, to the applicant? Commissioner Teal?
Sure. Yeah, Steve, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. I think some of what you spoke to earlier on and what we talked in at length, in addition to everyone's understanding of temporary and how we got here with use of space, is how we're seeing this as fitness facility versus sports facility or sports training facility, if that's correct. I mean, how do you define your indoor facility and how do you define your use or your differentiation from the use in your current and potentially expanded to outdoor facility?
And that's a tricky one because I consider the use essentially the same. We have slightly different business operations at each location, but that's based on one has a turf field that's outdoor and has a lot more space, and then indoor is set up as a gym and a batting cage. So the uses essentially are exactly the same. It's just a matter of the wording and the terminology. And going back to when we originally opened our indoor facility, which was mentioned in the staff report, there was no permitted use in the shopping center for a sports training facility. So I never wanted to call ourselves a gym, which is traditionally categorized as a fitness facility, because we weren't a gym. We're a gym and batting cage. So it's a sports training facility. That's the business that we operate, which is really common across United States,
Mhm.
but it's the first time that there had been one in Moraga. So it's the same thing now out at the field. It's a sports training facility, but we also have a lot of other services that we provide. So it's hard to hold the business into one category, such as a fitness facility or an outdoor recreation facility.
Gotcha. And how we got here, as far as due to the pandemic and the shutdowns associated with fitness and athletic training facilities, you transitioned your facility to the temporary use that you have now outside.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I'm okay on the question side. Thanks, Steve.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Helber?
I'm sorry, I just have one quick question. I think this all originally started when you put up a tent, but I don't see a tent as part of the current proposal. Is that true?
That is correct. 0 tents.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
If there are no other questions, I had at least one I wanted to ask. So one of the things is that I think we've all seen with COVID, that it helped to demonstrate some needs that we didn't know that we really had. Like when you go in San Francisco, you see outdoor dining, and it's fantastic to be able to have those opportunities. I'm sure it's the same here, where your business has clearly demonstrated a need in this community for something like it. Unfortunately, it's in a place where we're in a town that is required to also zone 1,100 new units over the next 8 years, and you're in ground zero for where a lot of those units need to be zoned. So my question to you is, have you explored other options? For example, in our last meeting, we approved a new stadium for St. Mary's. They're significantly upgrading their ball field and facilities there. I'm sure Camp Lindo, I don't know how new their facilities are. My kids are not even in transitional kindergarten yet. So I just wanted to hear from you, long-term, as a businessman, are there other places that you could see your business move to for this use in Moraga?
The short answer is no, not in Moraga. And the more clear answer is that I've looked for spaces for outdoor sports fields for the last 5 years in all of Moraga and the surrounding communities, and even further than that. And there is no other location in Moraga for this type of use. And also, to your comment on the 1,100 residential units, I encourage you to continue trying to find opportunities for sites for those. But until that happens, if you shut down this field, it will have a huge negative impact in the community.
Just to follow up on, have you explored reaching out to any of the school districts or to St. Mary's about potentially in the future developing some type of long-term joint use for their facilities when they're not in use for school purposes?
Not specifically with St. Mary's, but I certainly have with the town of Moraga and with the Moraga School District and the Occolani's High School District, as far as trying to do a joint project to build fields or improve upon fields. It's something that I've looked into for countless hours and discussed it with many different people, but those type of projects are extremely difficult to pull off, to provide funding for, to do a public-private partnership between any of these entities. But this location that we're at right now is a private location that I'm able to open up essentially in a month, is what we did when we started out. So there are no other financially viable solutions that would happen anytime in the next couple of years. Although I'm going to continue to research and try to find a location for a permanent sports field or sports complex, because there's incredible demand for that. But in the meantime, I have one now that's been incredibly beneficial, which I'd like to continue using until that site is needed for something else.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Commissioners, if there are no more questions, I was checking to see if folks would be interested in a 5-minute break before we go to public comment. Sounds good?
Sure.
Okay. So let's come back
Kindness to
then
others.
at 8:20.
8:20.
wait another moment for Commissioner Helber, and then we can transition to public comments. There he is. At this time, we will open the public comment portion of the meeting as they pertain to this particular item. If anyone from the public wishes to speak on this item, please utilize the raise hand feature of this webinar, and we will call on you. And remember to state your name and address for the record. You will be given 3 minutes to speak. So looks like we have 3 people raising their hands. And the first is former Mayor Metcalf. Please speak when you're ready. If you can unmute yourself.
Okay, very good. Okay, now can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, fine. Well, good evening and thank you for your service to the town. The town simply couldn't carry on without folks such as yourselves. And Karen Murphy is off the screen right now, but I'm delighted to see her, and she's stuck with the town for, she was on, when I was on the planning commission, she was doing what she's doing now. So hats off to her. There you are. Still got that pretty smile. Anyway, let me start with some prepared comments. I sent these to you. I don't know if staff got them to you for your reading, but I'll read them into the record in any event. Okay, it seems just yesterday that Mr. Hammond was before the Planning Commission seeking a use permit for a temporary baseball training facility. Several of you on the commission today were present that night. Mr. Trotter, who is going to be speaking after me, hopefully, we were both testifying against Mr. Hammond's petition at that time. Well, now Mr. Hammond's back, and so are we. The arguments have not changed. They're all the same. For many, many years, the town citizens engaged in discussions amongst themselves and with the property owners on the area known as the specific plan area. As a community, we settled on a plan that would provide a path forward for the town to reinvigorate this large area smack in the middle of town. Many objectives are met: housing, commercial, and recreational. Since approval of the specific plan many years ago, only a small portion of that area has been developed. That is the City Ventures project over on Moraga Way. It's astonishing that the major property owner has sat on their hands for all these years, allowing their property to continue to blight the center of town. What they have done or have failed to do has given the town a black eye and has made the town, frankly, the laughing stock of Contra Costa. We now have a temporary ball training facility back before us. While there's no structure proposed, not even a tent affair, there is an expansive array of field facilities, all called temporary. The petitioner asked for an open-ended permit to carry out their proposed plan, right in the center of the specific plan area, which envisages a crossroads for new streets that would open up the area for all sorts of beneficial uses. One can imagine what difficulties the town would experience when, at some future time, it becomes ripe to actually do something with that area. How would the temporary use be terminated? Given the traditional behavior of the property owner and their underutilization of the large area just across School Street to the west, a classic example of urban blight if there ever was one, I would venture that the temporary use would probably endure. There's a saying amongst those who have worked in the areas of the Middle East and the deserts, and it goes this way: never let the camel get its nose under the tent. Camels don't go away, and this camel would be no different. In recent weeks, the town has invited citizens to join in planning for new housing to meet state mandated housing requirements. The specific plan area is consistent with that planning, with many new housing units in line with the mandated affordability requirements. If the town cannot find opportunities for required housing, and the state opines that the town's housing element is out of compliance with housing law, then the state can impose its own requirements on the town. That's not a pretty prospect, and the town should avoid it at all costs. Property owners need to pitch in and do their part. They need to generally offer up their properties for developments, those developments that they actually intend to build. And they can profit from this. While the town can't presently require that housing actually be built, only plan for, don't be surprised if a future version of state government doesn't change those rules and require that projects actually do get built. The storm clouds are growing, and property owners of opportunities like the specific plan area are going to be targets for new authoritarian onslaught. So why on earth would the specific plan property owner want to move now before, I'm finishing up,
Okay, thank you.
before this juggernaut comes upon him? Having Mr. Hammond's temporary use right in the middle of the specific plan makes no sense. It goes in the wrong direction. Why not right now get on the property owner to develop the area as originally envisaged? Don't be fooled by the pleasantries expressed by the proponent's application. Once in place, he will be tough to dislodge. The town has a poor record with enforcement of its land use permits. Too often property owners do just as they please, the town be damned. My plea to you is to not be taken for fools. Give him the right to operate a temporary facility on this valuable property. Don't do it. Start pressuring the property owner to move deliberately on the specific plan area and contribute to the welfare of the town as the specific plan envisages. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And looking for other, looks like we have 5 hands raised. The next one I see in line on my screen is Jason. Jason, if you can unmute yourself, and Director Hamid, if you would mind keeping time for us.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
We can hear you.
Great. My name is Jason Lind. I'm an 8-year resident of La Miranda, and I will respect the 3-minute timeline. I'm in a state of dismay. I've heard ridiculous comparisons between sports and recreation versus fitness by all logic are the same thing. A member of this committee has recused herself because she knows firsthand the positive impact this facility has had on her kids. The laughing stock of Miranda, to who? I'd like to meet them. Send them over. Send them up to Lafayette tomorrow. I'll meet them for coffee. I want to know who thinks this is a laughing stock. And to top it off, to say detrimental to the general welfare of persons? Are you serious? Is this a liquor store? Is it a purveyor of cigarettes or drugs? You know that 1.6 million people a year die from those 3 items alone. All that said, I'd suggest you focus on 2 things, and Steve said it well. This is about kids, and this is about small business. We've just come out of COVID, and kids and small businesses, along with the elderly, are the most highly impacted cohorts of the past 2 years. Look and think at what we've been through. Kids from a mental health and well-being basis, do you know that statistics show that 1 in 5 high school students nationwide seriously considered suicide on an annual basis before COVID? Now, regarding your votes, in the event you vote no, I propose you an open session to see and speak with firsthand the hundreds of kids and parents who will be negatively affected by your vote. Invite them, sit them down, and explain to them your rules. Watch their despair, watch their confusion. If you vote yes, I'd invite you to go see the magic of the kids and the adults, a live version of the pictures Steve showed. Enjoying themselves, playing outdoors, camaraderie with friends, social relationships, everything that was missing for the past 2 years. And as Carl Davis said, I kind of wonder why there's a problem. I really do. Kids and small business, stop taking yourself so seriously and focus on what matters. Let them flourish for a change. Find a way, there is a way.
Thank you for your comments. Next in line, we have Matt Deems. Matt, if you can take yourself off mute.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Jason, that was very eloquent. I promise I will not be as eloquent as you, but I'm definitely on your side. I have a few comments that I've written as I've been watching this. I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I will say, I'm a father of a 9-year-old daughter, and 6-year-old daughter, who both love baseball. And, having the outdoor facilities has been very inspirational for them, the development, and not only that, but creating a very safe outdoor setting for them during this very challenging time. So we've enrolled in camps. We've had a birthday party there. We're going to one there Friday. I don't know if that's the indoor or the outdoor one, but it's a very important part of this community. My older daughter, Amara, has been involved with lessons, developed, honestly, some of her closest relationships through these events and parties. This is the idea of building community, and I think Steve has done an incredible job at this. He's a baseball player himself, and I don't think this is about making money. This is about community. So I think I'll also just say I think Steve said it best. This started as batting cages, but it turned into a lot more, and it's because the demand. It's because of what this community needs, and it provides year-round benefit for the community. So how Steve is not being commended on this, and ideally potentially being shot down, is shocking. I'm just baffled by this, to be totally honest. And so I think they should be commended for their efforts, and he should have the ability to operate until something else is built. I mean, it's a travesty if that's not the case. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next in line, it looks like we have Mark Weaver. Mark, if you can unmute yourself, please.
Yes, thank you. I don't have prepared remarks, but let me say that I'm supportive of the last two speakers. I have 2 children at Camp Alindo High School, a son and a daughter, and as was said by the earlier speaker, it has been challenging during COVID with mental health. And the ability to get these kids outside from June of 2020, I think, when my son first started exercising at that facility outdoors, was just a lifesaver. And it continues to be. I mean, these kids, this is not supplanting something that's already there. I mean, these kids are getting activity that they wouldn't otherwise have. They're going after school on the weekend. It's necessary when school is closed. When school is closed, there is an area for them to be and to have and to see people, to exercise. I mean, this is a godsend for our community. And as we know, unfortunately, the mental toll continues to hit. The mental toll is not coming out of this pandemic, as we've seen in this past week in our community. It's still very, very much with us. And I would ask this commission to find a way to approve this going forward. And there are, and I think I would ask the town council to look to other cities in the state of California. For example, the city of San Francisco, in their temporary conditional use permit application, they allow uses from 1 day to 2 years with renewals. If it's in other places, it's even longer. You have parking lots that fit under CEQA for 5 years. What we have is we don't have structures. We have no permanent structures here. This is just a blighted area that Steve is improving for the mental health benefit of our youth. And if it takes, conditionally approving for 2 years and then renewing and seeing where things stand, so be it. This is a benefit to the community. And if the assistant town attorney can help, if need be, find legal authority to allow a longer continuation period with the ability to renew, that would be, I think, the preferred course forward and the benefit of this town. That's just, again, I applaud the applicant, and I hope that this continues for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next person in line, John Belio, if you can take yourself off mute, please. I apologize if I butchered your name.
Yeah, that's right. Can you hear me? Okay. I want to support of Steve here. When shutting down or attempting to shut down the ball players field and using terms such as land use, I just need to remind you all that you're doing it wrong. You can't see it in your current capacity, but you are. You're just doing it wrong. When driving around Moraga and seeing a lot of government establishments competing against small business, whether it's the school districts, St. Mary's and Steve's World, you start to see that the government is a player and not the referee. And the government's job is to be the referee and not the player. And you can hear Steve struggling to work with whether St. Mary's or Camp Lindo. Those are all government, just like he's struggling to work with you. It's impossible to work with the government. So with that, I close kind of with the metaverse. That's not me. The metaverse with exclamation points. It's going to be the single greatest American adventure, only because of you and towns like you. Because here people can just simply pay Mark Zuckerberg and build whatever they want. And without any permits or land use or drop-down menu of all these little choices for Steve, you just do it and you live. But the problem is we're all going to be indoors in virtual reality, and towns like Moraga are going to deteriorate. So a vote no for Steve is a vote yes for the metaverse. And listen to this today. I just wonder if we are really the land of the free. All the money he had to pay to get a permit and just get as far as he has to, which is really nowhere. This ain't the land of the free. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Looks like we have one more hand raised. Brian Johnson. Brian, please take yourself off mute.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for your time. I just wanted to make a comment that I went to St. Mary's College. I've been living in the Orinda Moraga area for the last decade. I have 3 young children, and we have utilized Bay Area ball players, both the indoor and the outdoor facility many times. And, you know, we love it, we enjoy it. And it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to deny a permit, in my opinion. And we think you should vote for it. Whether there is some existing land use issues, you know, as Steve said earlier, he put it together in 30 days. He could take it down in 30 days. And I encourage you to help him find a location in Moraga, rezone it, and let him build something awesome. That's what he wants to do. There's a big demand, and the entire community would back it. And I think that's your guys' job, and I think you should help him in this. Let this be a transition facility for him for something long-term. But I highly doubt St. Mary's College or Campo is going to partner with Steve Hammond to create a facility for the entire community to use. That's not their long-term goals. But we would recommend this permit to be approved, and to aid him, help him find a better location in this area. There's a huge demand, and it's kind of frustrating that Moraga over the last several decades hasn't planned for this in the future. Why don't we have the biggest and best facilities out here? There's plenty of demand for it. Let's create it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next person in line is Dave Trotter. You can be brought over. Dave, if you can take yourself off mute, please.
Thank you, Chair Hillis, Vice Chair Hillis. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. Yes, hello, my name is David Trotter. I'm a former 3-time mayor and 3-term elected official on the Moraga Town Council. I just want to build on a little bit of what the staff is recommending and add some further context. It's very clear, and I've been listening very carefully throughout the hearing, that the granting of a permanent conditional use permit it can never occur at this location. It is And that is because it is fundamentally inconsistent with the Moraga Center specific plan and the current zoning for that area. And so it would be a really, really bad idea to do anything that would get you anywhere near the granting of a permanent conditional use permit. And I would suggest that you do confer with your attorney, Karen Murphy, my good friend. Good to see you, Karen, who had some pertinent things to say about the need for there to be a finite, for purposes of something being temporary, there needs to be a finite period of time. Otherwise, you start down that slippery slope and you may end up in a place you don't want to be, which is having a facility like this that is in an area that is part of the town focal point of a future town square, where streets are going to cross, that is referred to in the Moraga Center specific plan on the very first paragraph as the future heart of Moraga. And this is not an appropriate use in the future heart of Moraga, which is going to be a commercial area with a public gathering space, a town square. And so think very carefully about that. If there's going to be a temporary use permit granted here, that should be for a very, very finite period of time, and it should be stated expressly, not be open-ended, because you might get into CEQA issues that way, and you might willy-nilly get into having inadvertently granted a permanent conditional use permit. And I know that Mr. Hammond speaks to the fact that the applicant, the owner of the property doesn't, want there to be a permanent use, conditional use permit there, anything permanent there either. But I can tell you from firsthand experience working with the landowner in the past that they have a tendency to sometimes change their mind. They're mercurial, and I don't think you can. Although I'm not at all questioning Mr. Hammond's good faith here. The Planning Commission has to keep in mind the possibility that there could be a change in the thinking here, and you might get into the situation where by what you've done, by not having a finite temporary use permit, you have created a problem with ultimately having a use in a location which is inconsistent with our general plan, inconsistent with the terms of the Moraga Center specific plan. You really don't want to go there. And if you have any questions about that, you can look at figure 4-2 of the Moraga Center specific plan, which talks about the focal point. And there's language on page 37 in this area. I can tell you as one of the people that, along with Mike Metcalf, was involved in the visioning for the adoption of the Moraga Center specific plan, we think that this area of the town is extremely important to the future vitality of the commercial and residential heart of the town. So this particular use, which might be very appropriate elsewhere, in this particular location is not a particularly appropriate use and is inconsistent if it is ever allowed to be made a permanent use. I also have some comments. There's some typos.
If you can wrap it up, please.
Sure, I'm almost done. And I don't have time to actually talk about this, but I noticed some typos on the conditions of approval 6, 12, and 13. I'd be happy to point those out if you ask me a question. And with regard to conditions 15 and 16, which the applicant raised as a matter of concern, I will just say this, and that is that the town staff does have the inherent authority to inspect uses to ensure compliance. And so those conditions are appropriate. I might not use the words "the applicant shall adhere," but there might be other language that could be put there to make it clear that these kinds of inspections happen all the time in cities, and it's totally appropriate for them to be able to happen in this particular case with respect to a temporary use, which ultimately is going to have to be removed. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you for your comment. And it looks like next in line, we have Sarah Lind. Sarah, if you can take yourself off mute, looks like you have.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Great, thanks. I just wanted to also add my personal experience and share, echo some sentiments regarding what Bay Area Ball Players brings to the community. I have 2 young children who have participated in events there and have flourished in in just personal and emotional growth. I personally benefit from use of the field because of the opportunity that they've provided through summer camps camps in the holiday times and exercise and such. But if there's a will, there's a way, and what they provide, just it's invaluable, especially after what kids have experienced these last couple of years, and adults for that matter too. And to rip the rug out from underneath them it's short-sighted. It's a small business, and small businesses have suffered, and what they bring to the community, what they offer in taxpayer dollars, how can you help them rather than hurt them is what I would like you to focus on. They give to the community, they give to children, and they should not be penalized for doing something like this. Just begging you to find a way to support them as best as you can. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Looking to see, if any other person has their hands raised, and it doesn't look like they do. Mio, is there another place on the live stream or something like that where folks?
No.
Okay. Well, then we will close the public comment section of this meeting and bring this back to the commissioners for further discussion. Do any of the commissioners have any comments that they'd like to make?
I have a question, actually, one of the speakers.
Commissioner Halbert.
If, through the chair, if we could have Dave Trotter point out some comments on the resolution. I believe he pointed out on condition of approval, item 6. I believe it says permit instead of permanent, but there were a few other ones, and I wasn't able to catch it.
Dave, if you're still with us, can you take yourself off mute?
Thank you, Vice Chair Hillis. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, Ben, you have that right on condition 6. On 12 and 13, I was referring to the word maintenance, which is not right in either of those contexts. Clean, it should be maintained. That would be appropriate, or serviced. And with regard to 15 and 16, if I think that those are appropriately retained, and it could simply state that the Town of Moraga Planning Department shall have the ability to inspect the site on a monthly basis to ensure the conditions of this approval are being met, as opposed to having the applicant shall adhere. I don't think that's the right way to approach that. That's that would also apply to 16, I guess, if that all makes sense to you.
Think so.
It kind of reminds me of what I used to do on the council, which is edit staff's work in deliberations.
Ben, I see you diligently writing, so I hope you got all that down.
I'm sure staff has, but I'm trying.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trotter. Any other questions or comments that commissioners care to share?
Yes, please.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Chair Ellis. We've heard from a lot of passionate people, passionate on both sides. People I respect, and I'm going to respectfully disagree with. The future heart of Moraga, the vision is great. This temporary use for permit will facilitate this vision when the property owner chooses to move ahead. Our applicant has no impact, no ability to impact that future choice. The town actually doesn't have a direct impact on that future choice either. It is pretty much up to the owner. And as I have been reminded several times in the last few months, the town doesn't build anything. Developers do, owners do, the town does not. This is a temporary use permit application that is by definition to end when that permanent use is put into motion. That's pretty simple. 6-month recommendation that we have now is specifically designed, appears to be specifically designed to force this business out of town. There is no other location in this town, and to pretend otherwise is silly. Any level, flat, open space in this town is going to be housing. We already know that. We've already asked the residents now for 3 months to pick their favorite places for sticking the next housing tract. And unless we get a donation of Indian Valley, I don't know where we would put this facility on a more permanent basis. So we do know up front that we're going to lose Mr. Hammond. I don't understand why we would choose to do that any sooner than necessary. His facility creates no harm. It's all positives with no other alternative use proposed in this temporary moment before we have an application for permanent use. As a former planning commissioner once said, Ms. Christine Kirkuk, Little Appalachia has to go. And Steve Hammond has been the first step in Little Appalachia finally going. I would be entirely supportive if you could get a conditional use permit to use both sides of School Street, and we could get rid of that RV parking lot and homeless shelter that's been running there. Might make the town cleaner and safer. What he's proposing now doesn't use any more space than it has already been permitted to use. It's not going to reach over to Moraga Road. It's not going to reach down in and around the hardware store or the Safeway. I would suggest asking him to pay $5,000 every 6 months to renew his permit is a really unfair business tax, undue burden. The temporary use of a non-contested location shouldn't be a question. A temporary use, and therefore it is only a temporary use, and therefore it is not a long-term zoning consideration or concern. It is a temporary use with certain conditions of termination. Not necessarily a calendar condition, but still certain and clear conditions of termination, as described by the applicant. He finds another place, he goes out of business, the town gets a development application approved. That's pretty safe. It's pretty clear and it's definable. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Davis. Any other commissioners care to share some of their comments? Commissioner Polsky.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis, I think, laid out his views incredibly eloquently, and I would say I echo those wholeheartedly, and will not go into repeating them. A question I have for Ms. Murphy. Am I allowed to ask questions at this point of staff? And
yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Second. Are there any laws in the state that have been enacted as a result of COVID and frankly the paradigm shift that we've seen? And someone referenced earlier the parklets that proved incredibly successful and have since been allowed. Is there anything we can lean on in that same vein?
There were a number of laws that were enacted, especially with the executive orders from the governor. However, I'm not aware of any that would impact the temporary use here that we could lean on. As I noted, as this is a temporary use, our recommendation would be for a finite period of time, and then the applicant could come in at that time for a renewal and address any changed circumstances. But I'm not aware of any specific law that would address this temporary use based on COVID.
So if I may, I know the town of Danville has allowed parklets in the streets for during the COVID period of time. But they are looking to, but again, that was temporary. Now they are looking to see what means they can do for permanent. They're also looking at, because not all of the parklets are designed the same. So they're really struggling with the quality of the parklets in some of the areas. And they're also struggling with where do you allow some of them to exist and where they should not exist. So there's a number of things that they are still evaluating.
Thank you. Follow-on question. Is there a way, and I fully admit I'm not versed on the process of the application process and the fees that are associated, but is there a way that we can reduce the burden if we were to enact something that has a finite date on it that requires Mr. Hammond to come back and get a renewal of the approval? Is there, would he then be subject to fees, and is there a way to lessen the burden of that? Not just for him, but frankly, for any business in this community.
A renewal would be subject to fees. I am not aware in our fee schedule whether a renewal would be less costly than coming in for the first temporary conditional use permit. Director Hamid may be able to see the fee structure.
Any fee changes have to go through council. That's not up to staff discretion.
And so the fees would be the same if we were to put a finite date on this.
As of today, yes, unless council takes an action otherwise.
Do you have any other comments, Commissioner Polsky? Or
none of the same.
Any other commissioners have any comments? Commissioner Teal?
Sure. Yeah, just appreciate the applicant's tenacity, resiliency, and I guess creativity in taking what was an indoor facility, bringing it outside, and really making us all aware of the benefit that this facility has had on the community. I think it's also been made clear by staff and through discussion with additional participants on the call, what the planned zone use is, and unfortunately, the need to have some limit of time. I think just on the points that I ran back through with Mia, there's both an expansion of, say, the footprint within the facility. I think the applicants made it very clear that they currently use and occupy through the agreement with the landlord an actual greater extent of the property that still fits within the boundary. And an expansion of use does result in some aspect of cleaning up the property. So from that expansion in space, I think I'd find myself okay with. As far as the expansion of use, I think birthday parties are birthday parties, whether or not they were happening indoors or outdoors, or they were continuing and they'll continue. And it's just kind of an integral aspect with youth sports. I think our focus, in my opinion, should be just on the time, given that this is temporary. It is something that's outside of the current planned future use for the space. And so really, I think if we could just as a group on this call, just kind of looking to see what we are comfortable with in defining that time. I think we had discussed with a perfect development might take somewhere up to a year if it moves through quickly. And 6 months being, as Commissioner Davis mentioned, just a very short period of time, and some of the comments made of not, say, pulling the rug out from under the business owner in the season in which they operate. So from a time standpoint, I think perhaps this temporary does remain, but it is beyond 6 months. And we do give it, say, upwards of that year is something that I'd be curious in discussing a little bit further with commissioners and staff.
You're on mute, Commissioner Vice Chair Hillis.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Teal.
Sure.
Either commissioners have any comments they'd like to share? If not, I have some comments. Commissioner Helber, did I see you getting ready?
Actually, I wanted to hear town staff comment on the duration that was proposed by Commissioner Thiel.
Sure. I think 1 year, and then we could do a renewal after 1 year. But we need a fixed time here, and we need to have a nexus. And we should also think about, encouraging the applicant to have a long-term business plan.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly there should be, the applicant has been in this location for over 1.5 years. So we should, the applicant maybe separately should discuss other locations and actively pursue, a long-term plan for the business, because the business is successful. And staff does want to support a successful business. And so we would like to see the growth and where that can occur.
Thank you. It's good to hear.
Thank you. And Commissioner Helber, I see you.
I just wanted, I guess, ask Karen Murphy, is there a potential inadvertent adverse precedent by doing it for 1 year?
No, 1 year would still fall within the definition, I think, of a temporary use. We'd still have a limited period of time.
Okay. I don't know if there's more discussion, but I think I'm ready to make a motion unless someone else has questions.
I see Commissioner Bodie raising his hand, and I'd also have a few comments I'd like to make after as well. Oh, you're on mute, Commissioner Bodie.
Okay, thank you. I'll be short. We desperately need outdoor playing fields. That is loud and clear. And a couple points that a few of the participants made. Mark Weaver made a comment around a longer continuation, right? Perhaps with a longer term date. And I'm thrilled that we're talking about that, because I'm really in favor of that. Something that Brian Johnson mentioned, what can we do to aid Mr. Hammond to find a better location? And I'm sitting here as we're talking, looking at, our parks, our trails, locations, and we got to get creative and think about, all right, what else can we do, right? What about Rancho Laguna Park? I mean, there are flat areas, a lot more room than we have in a parking lot behind the Safeway. I get that, it's very easy for Steve. It's, very close. You've got the proximity factor, and you've got, a very reasonable rent. So as a business owner, I get it. Makes sense. If I was Steve, I would want that too. That's a sweetheart deal. But that being said, we can't deviate from the from the MCSP. So the longer term, so I'm really in favor of that. That's great. But what can we do during that longer term to help out Steve to get those fields that this town needs? Absolutely. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bodie, and I'll be brief as well. And I really want to echo Commissioner Bodie's comments. First, just want to say, Steve, thank you for what you're doing for the kids in our community. I think you're providing an invaluable service, especially, you know, I'd heard that there's been some recent tragedies in town, and I, you know, as a father of three, having positive outdoor activities for our kids to do in Moraga is, I mean, it's invaluable. You really are doing excellent work, and whatever we can do to help you be able to do that into the future is really what we should be looking for. You know, there's only so much help I can personally offer. Otherwise, you'll be having another face that is blanked out on the screen at the next meeting. But I would say that, you know, I do think that, you know, I am definitely in support of extending this. I know that on previous meetings, I hadn't been as supportive, but as I said, COVID, you know, has changed a lot of minds on how to be creative with what is, as other commissioners have defined, a wasteland. That said, it still is the future center of our town. And with that in recognition, how can you develop a business plan so that this is something that's sustainable for, at some point, you would have to move this someplace else. I would hope that you would be able to find a way in Moraga. I would hope that there would be a way that town staff, potentially the Parks Department, could work with you on, you know, Rancho Laguna Park is one of my favorite parks to take my kids to, especially to go on hikes out to Carr Ranch or to the reservoir behind me. So I know there's space. So I said I'd be brief. I'm going a little long, but yes, I'm supportive of a year. I'm supportive potentially longer than that, but I definitely think that we need to have a time certain. Also, I'm wondering whether or not we should have language in there about a time certain, or until a development application is submitted. The comment that town attorney had made earlier is that if somebody holds a permit that's permitting use and it's within that time, that gives them a right over somebody that might want to develop. So if we were to say have it longer than a year, I would be open to that, as long as it had a provision that if there wasn't a viable application put in place prior to or during the course of that permit, that would be have the first right. I'm not sure if that conforms, town attorney.
That would be fine. So it basically would be for a finite period of time or until an application came in. So whichever came first, basically.
Gary, can I ask what duration you're proposing?
You know, it's been in operation for a year and a half at this point. Is it a year and a half, 2 years? Staff, can you correct me on how long this has been?
A year and a half.
I think a year and a half gives enough time for a lot of us to have discussions. I would be interested in whatever direction that we can provide to staff and the applicant to potentially work with the town parks department, to potentially work with other school districts or the university here, the private university, just to see whether or not there might be something to work out.
Through the chair, can I ask Karen Murphy a question?
Commissioner Albert.
So we're talking about the original proposed 6 months plus a year, 18 months. Is that still fall within the temporary use acceptable timeframe?
Yes, I believe so. Again, it's still finite. So 18 months would still have a finite period of time with a specific end date. Through the chair, if I may, that one other thing I wanted to note is that the resolution in the packet given the way the direction is going now, I think that we would need to revise that resolution and so when we get to the point of making a motion, it would be to direct staff to bring back a resolution with whatever the direction is.
So may I ask to confirm at this point? I'm understanding that a year and a half would be permissible, and that the reasonable protection that at least two commissioners have suggested is that it is a clause within the resolution that if an actionable permit were delivered and approved, that would terminate the temporary use permit.
Yes.
And those, so that gives
For
Mr.
this
Hammond.
parcel,
Yeah, I'm sorry. For
I'm
this
just trying to
parcel.
clarify the
Yes.
suggested amendment. It would be for this parcel.
Correct. If a actionable developable permit is approved or is approved for this parcel, it would terminate this temporary use permit, which otherwise would sunset in 18 months.
If I could,
Please.
I think we're trying to solve a condition the market has already resolved for us. There's an existing lease with the property owner. You can't submit an application without the property owner's approval. I don't want to inadvertently create a condition, disincentive for this property owner to actually submit something for this site. I am incredibly supportive of the Moraga Center specific plan. I think it's a great vision for Moraga, and I hope we get there sooner than later. I don't think I think this business serves a lot of benefit to the town. I think regardless of if it's approved as a permanent use or a temporary use, the landowner will at some point, hopefully soon, want to develop the Moraga Center specific plan for a higher and best use and will terminate this lease. I don't want to put anything in the conditions that would deter the applicant from submitting something, because even though they submit an application, it's still going to take, best case scenario, and I know town staff is great, but best case scenario, 4 to 6 months to process, more likely a year.
Yep.
So if we make it something upon the submittal of an application, again, I just think that particular suggestion, I support the intent. I don't want this use to deter the Moraga Center specific plan from happening. I just don't think this use will do it. But if it pleases the chair, I'd be more than happy to make a motion as advised by Karen Murphy that we make minor amendments to the staff report. I guess that if it pleases the chair, I'll make a motion. Is that all right?
Yes, please.
Please.
Okay. I make a motion to approve the resolution as drafted by staff to approve the temporary use with the following minor modifications to be brought back to the Planning Commission for final compliance determination. And the ones that I wrote down, Karen, were on page 6. The word permit should be permanent. I'm sorry, it's not page 6, item 6. On item 12, last sentence, maintenance once a week should be maintained once a week. That same comment repeats on number 13, maintained once a week in the last sentence. Number 15, to revise to something along the lines of town staff may perform site visits as deemed necessary to ensure the conditions of approval are being met. Number 16 would be revised to something along the lines of town staff may perform a final site visit, so on and so forth. And I think that was it, other than the duration, and I apologize.
Through the chair, I think for number 16,
Yes.
if staff is to have any review when a development application comes in. This is something that we do on all applications, especially when they're temporary. We do go out to the site. So it's not a may, it's a shall. And we do go to make sure that the site has been restored to the original condition or better.
So are you advising that we don't need this condition at all, or are you saying it's?
No,
it
I'm
shall say
advising that
shall?
number 16 be revised to state that Town of Moraga staff shall perform a final staff visit to ensure the land has been returned to the pre-permitted use determination or better.
I was trying to write it to give a little bit more leniency on however you guys try to act at the moment. If you want it to say shall, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, because then shall gives us some authority so that we can also enforce conditions of approval. Otherwise, if it's a may, then we can't, then it's, subjective. But shall gives us a little bit more authority to ensure that the site is restored. Especially when a temporary use has been there for that long.
I guess this is coming back for ultimate approval. Karen, however you think this needs to be drafted with staffs, I support staff and all their recommendations. The final was the duration, and I apologize.
Can we all?
So I believe it's number 3. Wait,
Actually, number 4.
thank you very much. Can we revise number 4 to be an 18-month term?
So we would increase it to October 31st of 2023.
Yes. And I see Commissioner Polsky.
Yeah, either a discussion or a motion around the use and allowing the expansion of the use beyond what was originally approved.
I didn't see any condition that restricted the use as from what was now. There might have been discussion of staff report. Was there a condition?
Yeah, looking at
yes.
page 9, item 8, recommendation. The clause is, and denying the request for expansion of the facility and these other uses, that needs to be changed to include the expansion and those other uses. And I would recommend striking lines 10 through 13 at the bottom half of that paragraph.
I'm sorry, what page are you on? On
I'm
the
on page
resolution?
9, chapter 8, recommendation.
Is that a staff
Over,
report?
he's on the staff report. He's not on the resolution.
It is on the
Is
staff
there anything in the
report.
resolution that restricts the use?
No, that was just, the conditions of approval were based on the staff report. And staff
Correct.
report recommendation. So it would have to be a change in the recommendation.
And it would be a change to the title of the resolution because the title just approves it in part, as well as a change to section 4 of the
That's correct.
resolution approval in part.
Yes.
I accept the friendly amendment to change the, I guess, text of the resolution itself. After where it says until that date, and then it says and denying, I guess it would be eliminating the and denying portion.
And question on appropriateness, would it be appropriate to direct town staff to work with Barrio ball players on identifying alternative sites for a potential permanent facility?
I don't know personally if that fits within this temporary use resolution, but it might be a informal direction to staff.
That sounds great. So let's provide that informal direction and not muddy up the resolution any further.
Question, Mr. Hammond posted a question in the chat about his ability to come back in front of us and request an extension. And I just want to clarify or ask for clarification that nothing precludes him from showing up 18 months from now and asking for an additional extension.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Actually, if that is the case, we will have to change another one of the conditions. Because condition number 3 does state that it is a one-time operation of the temporary sports and recreational facility.
We're only approving a one-time. He would have to come back for us at a later date for another resolution, for another, right? To me, that meant we're not approving multiple extensions, we're just approving one extension. But I leave it to Karen to correct it as appropriate.
I think we might maybe able to, we could leave the language as is, but thank you for mentioning that, that Mio, and we'll add any clarifications to confirm that it would be subject to any additional action.
Thank you. So we think we have a resolution or a motion.
Yeah, does this need to come back? This needs to come back to Planning Commission with the revised reso and conditions of approval. Is that correct, Ms. Murphy?
Yes, that's correct. As I understand the motion is to direct staff to make the revisions to the resolution that have been noted and to bring it back for consideration.
Do we have a second?
Actually, may I add that you request a date certain so we can lock this in and not have to renotice it?
Can I just confirm that doesn't require any more fees by the applicant, does it? Okay.
Question.
Director Hamid.
I don't know where the fees are. I mean, I know that he's paid deposits and we work on a deposit basis. We're on recovery, so.
Hopefully this won't incur any more costs to the applicant.
We'll try.
Give them 18 months.
We'll try to be streamlined here.
Are there any issues with the expiration of his current temporary conditional use permit that we need to address?
I see Mio shaking his head no.
No, because we're currently taking this permit forward and it sounds like we're getting ready to approve it. There should be no hindrances in operation of his business.
Karen, do we think this could come back by the next meeting, which I think is like May 4th?
Yes.
Wait, May 4th is the joint town council planning
Oh,
commission.
sorry. I didn't mean it. The next planning commission.
Strike from the record.
How about electronic staffing?
All right. So
May 3rd, Tuesday.
are we ready to is somebody I'll make the second.
Very happy to be a second.
All right. We've got Commissioner Davis as a second. Next is roll call vote. Commissioner Helber.
Aye.
Commissioner Polsky.
Aye.
Commissioner Teal.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Bodie.
Aye.
And I'm also an aye. So the resolution passes. There is a 10-day appeal period on any decision made by the Planning Commission. Appeals can be directed to planning staff or the town clerk. And I think we can now invite Chair Luster to come back to the meeting.
Hey.
I wanted to make one quick clarification. At this point, this isn't final action on the permit, so the appeal period won't run until the actual adoption of the resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And here we have the chair.
Well done. Woo! Okay. Let's go to item number 7. Thank you, Vice Chair Hillis, for handling that very simple matter. I'm being facetious. Number 7, routine and other matters. We are moving on to the to consider the nomination and selection of a new Planning Commission chair and vice chair. So in doing that, I just wanted to ask briefly if there are any who have not spoken to me, who are interested in putting their name in the ring for either chair or vice chair. not all at once now. Okay. So at this
Yeah,
point,
you did a pretty good job sitting in for you, Brenda, or Chair Lester.
great job. I will nominate then Vice Chair Hillis as chair moving forward. Okay, and I guess, do I second the nomination or do we just vote? I don't even, just like it's not a motion situation, right?
I don't know. We need a second, I can second.
Yes, you need to take a second, and then you need to ask if anyone else wants to do a nomination for chair or vice chair.
Okay. Would anyone else like to nominate someone for chair?
I don't want to nominate anyone, but I actually want to compliment the chair and the current vice chair of how smoothly these meetings have run. I think you guys are doing a fantastic job, and I think we have a lot going on this year. And I would be more happy to let this thing ride out. You guys can have both positions go for the next year.
Either which way, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Helmer. Thank you so much. Commissioner Bodie?
Yes, I'd actually like to second what Ben just said. I too feel like we have a lot going on, and I just look at the two of you guys, how you run these meetings, and I'm always really immensely impressed. And, you know, just want to say thanks, because it's a huge undertaking. So, but I'd like to nominate you, Brenda, to be then the vice chair. If you guys would be willing to swap.
Is there
So-
anyone else who's wanting to be the vice chair? Who would want to throw their name in? I certainly don't need to take it. So if anyone wants to try. Okay. Okay, so at this point, I guess we can just put up that we nominate Vice Chair Hillis for chair, and we nominate Chair Luster for vice chair. Do I have a second to that whole idea?
Yep.
Commissioner Davis will second that entire idea. Let's go
Yep.
ahead and take a vote. Can I just visually do I have to do a roll call vote?
Yes, you need to do a roll call.
Okay. Can I have, I guess we will start with Vice Chair Hillis
Aye.
and Commissioner Helber,
Yes.
Commissioner Polsky,
Aye.
Commissioner Teal,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Bodie,
Aye.
and Chair Lester, aye. That nomination passes unanimously, and now we can move the chair position on to Vice Chair Hillis, who is now Chair Hillis, and I will take over as Vice Chair Lester. So with that, I guess I can pass the baton for this year to Chair Hillis. You can finish out the meeting.
Well, thank you. And Brenda, I only hope that I can do nearly as good of a job as you've done. As I said previously, my wife has told me, wow, if ever you get to become chair, be sure you're as good as her. So she's definitely a fan of yours, and she'll give me some critiques. So with that, we move to item 8 on the agenda, reports. Do any of the planning commissioners have anything to report?
I have just one comment. I noticed that the town of Moraga has a small business grant for $150,000 that's being channeled through the planning department. Is that correct, Afshan?
Yes, through the planning department in collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay. I think it's important, maybe you could remind Mr. Hammond that, I think his business would really qualify. Clearly, his is one that was hit by COVID, so might be a way to, just maybe get things off, on the right foot with him, since there looks like there's been a little bit of awkwardness over the years. And anyways, just always nice to see things like that. I've run a small business for almost 20 years now, and it's now not longer small anymore, but I know what it's like to run a business like that. And you need as many strong partners as you can get. So let's just remind him that those funds are there.
Yeah, he was at the meeting when the town council discussed the grants. And he was one of the speakers, so he is aware. And
Okay.
the chamber is responsible for actually disseminating all the information. So the chamber is actively promoting this.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, I just saw that it was being channeled through the planning department. So just wanted to make sure that I brought that up.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have anything to report? Commissioner Polsky.
Would just like to share that I had the opportunity to go to the Planning Commissioners Academy that was held in San Ramon mid-March. Commissioner Davis was also in attendance. I'd like to thank the staff for encouraging me to attend. As a new planning commissioner, I thought it was invaluable to get the experience. It was also great to meet other planning commissioners and, for lack of a better term, hear their war stories and what they are working on. So would highly encourage anyone on this call to attend. I thought it was great, although next year it's going to be in Southern California, I believe. So maybe plan a long weekend for it, but I thought it was great. So thank you, Planning Director Hamid, for encouraging me and allowing me to attend that.
Thank you. Any other reports?
I could follow Commissioner Polsky's endorsement for the conference. It was great. There will be another one next year. This October, there is also a planning commissioners training conference, regional rather than statewide. It's free, and I recommend that we each of us consider attending. It is also through the Institute for Local Government, which is affiliated with the League of California Cities. It's probably very similar in a condensed format to what Nick and I were able to attend. Anyway, I recommend it. The vice chair has all the information.
Any other commissioner reports? I will make one. I said at the beginning of the meeting, but I'd like to say it for the record. My wife and I were happy to welcome Isaac James Hillis into the world on March 13th of this year. He is a very healthy 8 pounds, 3 ounces, and almost exactly a month early. So welcome to the world. And with that, I'll ask staff if you have anything to report.
Thank you, Chair Hillis. Yes. First, congratulations on your new addition. Person edition, not physical edition. And then I just wanted to take time to introduce Ashley James, if she's still here. She's our new principal planner, and Ashley brings over 15 years of experience. She has worked in Vallejo. She's worked at Berkeley. She's also worked with PlaceWorks as a consultant. So she is really well-rounded and brings a lot of experience, and please stop by and introduce yourselves. And then I would just like to remind you that we have the Balancing Act tool online. Please encourage you are the best ambassadors that we have out there. Please encourage your friends, neighbors, baseball teams, soccer teams, Girl Scout, Boy Scout troops. Please encourage them to take the Balancing Act tool. It's a fun little game, and we especially need to hear from the younger cohorts that live in Moraga about the placement of housing and the location of housing. And then I would like to also remind you that on May 4th, we have a special meeting with Town Council and Planning Commission and it's a joint meeting, and we will confirm the location, whether it's Zoom or in person, and it will cover some critical areas, parking, transfer of development rights, heights, and floor area ratio versus density. So all those things will be discussed because just zoning enough is not, just zoning a property is not enough to encourage development. We actually have to look at tools such as inclusionary housing in order to meet the RHNA numbers. So this housing element is very different from past housing elements. And we actually have to take actionable items in order to get our housing element approved. So we'll be discussing all those topics.
Thank you, Director Hamid. And with that, I'll ask if we have a motion to adjourn.
Eric, can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
Unfortunately, Director Hamid, I'm not going to be at this next planning joint hearing, but I'm very interested in this topic. Are we going to discuss it again later as we're going through the housing element update?
I would encourage you to definitely watch. So it's a study session on May 4th, because I think there's, you know, everybody has a different level of what it means to have inclusionary or parking or transfer of development rights. So we're definitely bringing this as a study session to make sure that all of us have like a similar understanding and all of us are informed. And once we have that, then, you know, we can either have some direction or, you know, we can discuss it in further detail, but we're not taking any action on the 4th.
Okay. Well, I'll regret to miss the discussion, but I'm glad to hear we'll still.
And I would encourage commissioners, once they receive the report, to please reach out to us and discuss it with us and get some clarifications, or if you have some questions or want to go through certain topics, we're happy to provide support.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Motion to adjourn. Commissioner Halper.
I so move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, and all those in favor say aye.
Hey.
Aye. No opposed. Motion passes. The meeting is adjourned at, what time is that? 9:38 p.m. All right, thank you, everyone, and we will see you next meeting. Have a great evening.
Congratulations, Chair Hillis.
Bye. Thank you.